This is The Professionals, a podcast by music business technology and broadcast media technology students on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio. In this series, students will interview industry professionals in their respective fields to help gather an idea of what it's like to work in their industry.
Hello guys, I'm Collin Haddix. I'm here with Patrick Flanagan. He just told me he's directing the musical over at Central on our way over to the recording studio. But why don't you go ahead and formally introduce yourself?
All right, I am Patrick Flanagan, semi-retired, and I graduated from Cardinal Stritch and the University of Toledo and the University of California at Irvine.
And so what would you say your expertise is in the music industry,
Well,
I guess?
My expertise in the music industry came about because I became a production manager out in Los Angeles. And we did all kinds of concerts starting at UCLA, where we did lots and lots of music from the classical genre. So that was pretty much all acoustic. We also did lots of rock and roll and lots of dance companies. So the sound became very important into what we did. I was a production manager, which means I was responsible for getting the crews together and doing the budgets and all of that stuff, which also meant from the years past during my education, I was, because starting at UT, we had to do everything.
Right.
So we had to learn sound and stagecraft and lighting and everything. So it was all sort of rolled into one.
So it was almost kind of like a music business program before it was called that?
Well, it was a theater program.
Yeah.
So as in doing theater, you learn to do, for example, I was a sound engineer, quote unquote, on a show where I had to go out and with recording equipment, had to go out and record things like trains and different sounds that we were not at that time. There were no computers.
Right.
So we had to go find things on albums that we could take to use as sound effects throughout a 2.5 hour performance. And then later on in Los Angeles, worked lots of good sound companies. And I'm the kind of guy who likes to learn from people who are already doing it. So right. I had a rudimentary idea of where we were with sound and what was needed.
Okay. So you said you went to UCLA.
No, UC Irvine.
UC Irvine. You worked at UCLA.
Yeah.
So what schooling did you get at UC Irvine?
At Irvine, I got my Master of Fine Arts in Acting and Directing.
Acting and Directing?
Yep.
Is what your degree was in?
Yep.
Do you continue to go to school, or did
now?
you, like, not now, but throughout your career, were there like workshops or?
I went to acting workshops. I went to some directing workshops. On the technical side, once I became a production manager, my life was no longer my own, and UCLA, we were a roadhouse, which means things were in for a day, out, and then another show would come in right. on the tail end of that. So a lot of my education came in the working world and
from hands-on experience.
Yeah, exactly.
So what experience or what moments did you learn in school that really helped you?
Actually, what helped me through the bachelor's degree and the MFA, what I learned is that I learned such a broad spectrum of things that it became. I looked at the world as a workshop, so that whenever I was doing something, I would stick my head in. When I did television, I would stick my head into the director's booth and see how they were doing things. I did voiceovers. I took voiceover classes. Anything I could do at the time when I was hustling work as an actor, I took as much as I can. And as I became a production manager, then I had to sprout my wings and do other things. When I started at UCLA, I was a scene tech. After I'd been there for about a year and a half, I got called into the office of the head person. Thought, oh crap, I'm done. And actually what it was, she gave me two options. I could become a production manager or an event manager, as they were called at UCLA, or I could go into sound. and I know this is a sound recording thing. However,
Right.
I took a look at being a production manager and being a sound guy and thought, telling people what to do and pointing my fingers.
Sounds way better
and
than actually doing
actually rolling up lots and lots of cable at the beginning. And
Right.
I was like, no thanks.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I guess that's kind of where what I'm looking to do. I really just want to get my foot in the door so I can have a job either as the sound guy or the stage hand or something along the lines in this field, because I don't really have anything place to step, really, so to speak, in this field so far.
In the Toledo area, it is a union town, and the local, I don't know the local number, but the local IA, it's the technicians thing, union, they use lots of people who are not union employees.
Right.
I know that right now there's been in Toledo that the IA has sort of been going all over the place. The gentleman that I used to use when I was at Stritch to do sound is now the head sound guy down at the Valentine.
Okay.
I know his first name. I could never pronounce his last name. It was very long. I think you met him.
Yeah.
We were up there. So he is now at the Valentine.
Okay.
And if you're trying to get your foot in the door, that would be a great place to go. I would call the local, and I can get that number for you. I don't have it because I don't deal with the IA anymore. But it's who you know in this in any of this business. It's who you know.
Yeah, the networking is more beneficial.
In.
At least that's what all my teachers and everybody keeps telling me.
Did you graduate with Robert Finkbeiner?
Yeah, I did.
Robert does that. Now, his way in was his dad,
right?
Who is one of the local guys. So you might call him if I don't get back to you in time. Get phone numbers to find out how to get a hold of him.
How to get a hold of
him.
Okay. We already talked about you continuing education. Do you have any future plans in the works?
Me?
Yeah, directing musicals is where you're at now.
Like I said, I thought
anything more?
As we were walking in, I thought I was retired. If things come up, I'll take them. When I first moved back from LA to here, I did some voiceover work.
Yeah, I guess, so that's kind of more or less why I wanted to interview you, because I know you've had an extensive career and you moved across the country doing it. So I kind of really wanted to hear about that, about the struggles and like the challenges, and was it hard finding work in the same field moving halfway across the country?
No, because when I'm going to go back. When I first moved back here, the goal, I was retired. I was done. I had done my...
So you weren't even looking for work?
The only work I looked for at that time was a little bit of substitute teaching. And you know what happened to me at Stritch.
Right.
So, and then the idea was to do some voiceover work. I'm done with on camera, and I'm probably pretty much done with acting. You have to remember stuff, and as you get older, remembering is not as easy as it used to be. So the directing stuff, if it comes up, it comes up. It's nice. It's a little added income. But from that point of view, all of the community theaters around here, they are not. They don't pay.
No.
Or if anything, they give you a small gas stipend or something like that. So if in this area, if I was looking to get back into that genre again, I would probably, because I know the IA uses non-IA people, and I would hope that I would start putting my resume out to places like the Valentine.
Yeah.
If they needed a production manager,
Stranahan.
or the Stranahan, or a couple of these sound companies. Prodigy is one. Great Lakes.
Yeah. So Todd Mitchell is actually one of our instructors.
Yeah, I know Todd.
Yeah. So I'm actually doing an internship in the fall, and I was gonna maybe get in contact with him, see if I could work something out over there.
And then again, it's who you know. Mm-hmm. No matter where you go in this business, it's who you know. If you know somebody that can help you get your foot in the door, that's the way it works.
And so that kind of brings me along to the next question. What are some pros and cons of this business?
You have to learn how to have the word no said to you a lot. You have to understand that there are Not as much here, but if you're going to move to one of the big places, New York, Detroit, Chicago, L.A., Dallas.
Even the smaller big cities like Pittsburgh and Columbus are having music scenes that are kind of up and coming and going. So,
but again, it's you've got, if you're going to do that, if you're going to move, then be prepared to eating a lot of top ramen.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
When you weren't retired, when you were living out in LA, how did you continue to find work? I know you kind of touched upon it it's about who you know, and you were asking people, or always looking and always keeping your eyes out, but what specifically?
Coming out of working when my position at UCLA was done away with, then knowing the people that I had worked with.
That really was beneficial.
Right, and then going back, once you make a friend in this business, or I'm going to rephrase that, once you make an acquaintance in this business, you've got to keep that relationship.
Right.
You've got to be able to know that it's somebody you can go and talk to.
And so how often would you suggest you talking to them, like even something like this? Would this be beneficial towards like networking towards your relationship? Or
it could be.
Hey, I know you did this podcast for me, so maybe in the future I need you to do something for me. Right.
Send a copy of what you've done.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure they hear what you've done, and in this case how your editing went, and show how your editing is, and show how your setup was, and make sure that the sound that you get is good, that it has made, you have no problems with it, and you don't hear things rattling in the background and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it comes to that. And again, I can't go to Great Lakes. Talk to Kevin out there. Kevin's running the place now that Bill has passed away.
Okay.
So Kevin and his wife, the last time I was out there, were the head honchos. I can never remember the gentleman's name at Prodigy. They're two very different organizations. Yeah. Great Lakes is a much higher end sound company and lighting company than Prodigy is. Their equipment is generally better. They charge more. Mm-hmm. Getting on a sound crew, if sound is where you want to be, learning how to set up a concert, learning little things like never lay your sound cables where your electrical cables are.
Right.
Bad move. I know for a fact. Make sure that when you run a cable that you have the male end going to the female end, not a male end going to a male end. Because I did that once with a 250-foot XLR cable.
And then you had to rerun.
And I had to rerun the whole damn thing. So, and it wasn't a matter, I could just go like this.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who was the sound person made me recoil it.
Oh.
All 250 feet of it. And then do the run all over again. It's a learning experience. You do that once, you will never, ever do it again.
Did you have a mentor to kind of show you the ways, or were you just kind of figuring this out on your own?
I had a mentor coming out of high school, sort of, kind of, but that was strictly for acting, which is where my head always was. Having a mentor on the technical side of the world, that was learning by the seat of my pants. And it was always asking questions. When I was in a position to hire people who knew a heck of a lot more than I knew, and then question them.
Right.
Then ask them why.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah. Why are you doing that? We had I'm sure you've heard of Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
Ronstadt. We had her in Royce Hall, which is an acoustic hall. It's built for acoustic music, but we had to support the mariachi band. They needed to have some sound reinforcement. So in order to do that, we had to reinforce Linda Ronstadt. And you couldn't.
Right. Her
voice is so big that she filled the room. Yeah. So we probably had the fader at about a 0.5 for her, and just let her do what she had to do. Because if we went past that, it was going to come back at us.
Right.
Also, if you ever get into a position where you have anything that you can do, and that's another thing I've learned, a bad thing I learned at UCLA is you never put a mixing desk under anything. It needs to be out in the open, because the one at UCLA was up in the orchestra part of the theater, but way in the back and under an overhang.
Oh.
And it was horrible. I mean, the guys who mixed there learned to, you learn the room.
Right.
So if you're there all the time, you know the room.
Got to walk. That's where you got to leave the desk and walk around.
That's right. When I was at the Nokia Theater, I was the technical director there. And I was there under construction. And our first, again, learning something to not do, our first 7 performances were, we had 6 nights of the Eagles and the Dixie Chicks. That's how we opened the thing. The guy who mixed for the Eagles, but the second, it's a brand new hall, so we let them rehearse and do stuff because they had just put out their something out of Eden, I forget what it's called. And he had somebody come and get me. He said, "There's a buzz in the room." What do you mean? There's a buzz. I don't know what it is yet, but there is a buzz. He was right, and it took us all. It was when they did the soundproofing in the hall, in the auditorium. They put an aluminum metal perforated grate.
Oh.
And it was just probably moving just like that.
Just enough.
I couldn't hear it. My ears aren't good enough, but JD did, and that was
good enough for you. We got a problem.
Yeah. So we tried to we had the architects come in and see if we could get it fixed before the concert, marginally, knowing that and we had already run the building out.
Right.
Several times.
Yeah. At that point, you kind of just make do as best as you can.
Yeah.
Did you do any sync licensing, or have you tried to put any music on television, or have you worked with television music or movie music at all? No,
not a bit. There is a huge divide between live performance and any kind of camera work.
Right.
And even though I had gotten very high into the technical direction, producing end of the world, I never could make that transition into
the camera
film
side.
And video. I acted that way. I had my SAG card and I had my at that time AFTRA card, both. But as a TD, a production manager, never could make, even with friends, couldn't make that transition.
Is that because that's a little too hard to penetrate, that business?
It's bias.
It's bias?
If you do live, you can't do TV. If you do TV, you can't do live.
Just because that's how it
That's
is?
just the way they work. And it's like, really?
So that's interesting. I think things might be changing a little bit.
One would hope.
Changing because now I feel like it's a little more go get your money, kind of take work from wherever you can get it.
Right.
Kind of mindset towards everything. So
I have a friend who I have a friend who's a friend of my cousin's who does a lot of work, audio work. Now he used to be with Buckeye, till they went through a few years back, and he lost his job. He eventually got hooked up with some folks that now he's doing work for non-union work for CBS, ABC.
Right.
Does a lot of the UT basketball and football games. He's not mixing for the most part. What he's doing is running cable and making sure microphones are working and troubleshooting and all that kind of stuff. But he's making a living.
Yeah.
He's making a decent living. He's never home.
Right.
And that's one of the problems with any kind of job having to do with the overall theatrical world. You're going to probably have to travel. And
you're probably going to be having a lot of late nights, very frequently.
Yes. Yeah. It was not unknown. It was not unknown for me to get home. 3 or 4 in the morning and have to be back at a call at 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So
did that cause any tension with your home life? Because I know some people struggle with balancing.
It was hard to balance my kids. That's where the problems came. Now, the other upside of it is if you're out and you're freelancing, you're going to have some downtime.
Right.
So that something that I always thought was part of the gig in the long run is you work when everybody else is having fun, and you have your fun when everybody else is working. So relationships, if they understand that, if they understand that's what's going to happen, it works. my first wife was a costume designer, so we knew that.
Right, she understood it.
Right. So,
any final advice for a student who's graduating, like I said, looking to get
do
hands?
anything you can and never say no, and always be nice. Always treat the people, number one, that you're working with, the people you're working for, and in this case, the artist. Make sure that you take care of them. I had a guy that I worked with at UCLA. I keep going back to that. Who he was sort of taught me the ropes and all the percussion and stuff that goes along with working in a place like UCLA. But he treated everybody who stepped on his stage when he was an event manager for that thing as a star. He treated the kids the same way he would treat
Lady Gaga.
Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
And never change that. You treat your coworkers the same way. I always treated people that I was working with as if they knew more than I did. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. But if you walk around putting people down, you won't be back.
Right. I like that because ultimately at the end of the day, it's a customer service industry.
Absolutely.
So you're there to help and be kind and service others.
Right.
So,
but you got to remember that customer service, again, goes to the people you're working with as well.
Very true.
And if you're working in the union, you make sure the call, what do they call them? The call steward knows who you are. Never say no to a job, and always give 100%. And don't get caught up with other people in the group that stand around the background talking and not doing the job that they're supposed to do.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks for making time for me for this interview.
My pleasure.
This has been the Professionals Podcast by Music Business Technology and Broadcast Media Technology students. Join us next time on Outcast OCCR Owens Community College Radio.